Beneath the tranquil surface of the South China Sea, a hidden threat lurks. The water glistens in the sunlight, and to the untrained eye, it appears to be a scene of perfect peace. Fishermen cast their nets, cargo ships glide by, and children play along the shorelines of the Philippines, all seemingly untouched by any sense of danger. Yet, deep below, the earth is restless. The ocean conceals secrets that have shaped the fate of nations and the lives of millions. It is a deep, dark scar on the ocean floor, a place where the earth's crust is tearing itself apart. This chasm, invisible from above, is a reminder of the planet's raw power. The trench is not just a geological feature. It is a living, shifting boundary, a wound that never truly heals. Here, the forces that built continents and raised mountains are still at work, grinding and straining in the darkness. This feature is known as the Manila Trench. For centuries, it has remained mostly quiet, a sleeping giant just off the western coast of the Philippines. Its presence is marked on maps and studied by scientists, but for most people, it is out of sight and out of mind. The trench stretches like a shadow, a silent sentinel watching over the islands, its true nature hidden from everyday life. But geologists know that this silence is deceptive. It is not a sign of peace, but rather the calm before a potential storm. The absence of frequent earthquakes does not mean safety. It means that energy is being stored, not released. Scientists pore over seismic records, searching for patterns, warning signs, and clues to when the next great rupture might occur. The trench is a ticking time bomb, accumulating immense pressure with each passing year, decade, and century. The slow, relentless movement of the Earth's plates is invisible to us, but it is as certain as the rising sun. Every moment of quiet is another moment of tension, another turn of the screw. The rocks bend and strain, holding back forces that, when unleashed, could reshape the land and sea in an instant. When that pressure is finally released, it could unleash a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. The energy stored in the trench is enough to move mountains, to send waves racing across the ocean, to topple cities and change the course of rivers. The devastation would not be limited to a single moment. Its effects could echo for generations, altering the lives of millions. Stretching for over 1,000 kilometers, the Manila Trench marks the boundary where one massive tectonic plate is slowly being forced underneath another. This immense length means that the potential rupture zone is vast, capable of producing earthquakes that could be felt across entire regions. The trench is a line of weakness, but also a line of incredible power, where the fate of islands and coastlines is decided. This process, called subduction, is one of the most powerful geological forces on our planet. Subduction zones are the engines of change, recycling the Earth's crust and fueling the creation of mountains, earthquakes, and volcanoes. The Pacific Ring of Fire, a vast horseshoe of seismic activity, owes its existence to these relentless forces. Here the Earth is in constant motion, never truly at rest. It is the same force that created the towering Himalayas and the fiery volcanoes of the Pacific Ring of Fire. The collision and subduction of plates have shaped the very face of our world, giving rise to the highest peaks and the deepest ocean trenches. The energy released in these zones is beyond human comprehension, a reminder that we live on a planet that is alive and ever-changing. Along the Manila Trench, the Sunda Plate is diving beneath the Philippine Mobile Belt. This slow-motion collision is a process that has been ongoing for millions of years, shaping the islands and seas of Southeast Asia. In classrooms and laboratories, scientists use models and simulations to understand this process, but the reality beneath the waves is far more complex and unpredictable. This movement is slow, only a few centimeters per year, but it is relentless. Over centuries, these tiny shifts add up to massive changes. The plates do not stop, do not rest, and do not negotiate. They move according to the laws of physics, indifferent to the lives above. The slow grind of rock against rock is a silent countdown to the next great event. This constant grinding builds up an incredible amount of stress in the rock, a hidden energy that is waiting for its moment to break free. Scientists monitor seismic readings, searching for the faintest tremors that might signal a coming rupture. The rocks themselves bear the scars of past events, twisted and fractured by forces beyond imagination. The world has witnessed the horrifying power of such subduction zones before. History is filled with stories of cities destroyed, coastlines erased, and lives forever changed by the sudden release of tectonic energy. These are not distant memories, but recent events that have shaped the modern world. In 2004, a rupture along the Sunda Trench triggered the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, a disaster that claimed nearly 250,000 lives. Entire communities were swept away in moments, and the world watched in horror as the scale of the tragedy became clear. The lessons of that day are still being learned, as scientists and governments work to prevent such devastation from happening again. In 2011, the Japan Trench unleashed a magnitude 9.0 earthquake, sending a towering tsunami crashing into the coast and causing a nuclear meltdown. The images of destruction, of entire towns washed away, and the Fukushima disaster are etched into the collective memory of humanity. These events serve as stark reminders of the power that lies beneath our feet. These events were not just earthquakes, they were global cataclysms. The shockwaves were felt not only in the ground, but in the hearts and minds of people around the world. News coverage brought the devastation into living rooms everywhere, reminding us all of our vulnerability in the face of nature's fury. Scientists warn that the Manila Trench possesses the exact same potential. The geological conditions are strikingly similar, and the proximity to densely populated areas makes the risk even greater. Experts have sounded the alarm, urging governments and communities to prepare for the inevitable. It is capable of generating a megathrust earthquake, the most powerful and destructive type of quake known to humanity, right on the doorstep of a densely populated nation. A megathrust event could trigger not only massive ground shaking but also tsunamis that would reach far beyond the initial rupture zone. The consequences would be felt across the region and perhaps the world. The danger is not abstract, it is a clear and present reality for millions of people. In the bustling streets of Manila, in the quiet fishing villages along the coast, and in the growing cities of Luzon, the threat is ever present, even if it is rarely discussed. For many, daily life goes on as usual, but the risk is woven into the fabric of their existence. The entire western coast of Luzon, the country's largest and most populous island, lies directly in the path of this potential disaster. From the northern tip to the southern reaches, millions of people live, work, and dream in the shadow of the trench. The cities and towns that line the coast are vibrant and full of life, but they are also vulnerable, perched on the edge of a geological abyss. From the historic city of Vigan in the north to the bustling economic zone of Subic Bay, coastal communities live their lives largely unaware of the colossal forces at play just beneath the waves. Markets open at dawn, children walk to school, and fishermen return with their catch, all while the Earth's plates continue their slow, inexorable dance. The beauty and vibrancy of these communities stand in stark contrast to the danger that lies below. The capital, Metro Manila, a sprawling megacity of over 14 million people, also sits within the zone of influence. Skyscrapers rise above ancient riverbeds, and highways crisscross land that has been shaped by countless earthquakes over millennia. The city is a testament to human resilience and ingenuity, but it is also a reminder of our vulnerability. In a single moment, everything could change. The question is not if the Manila Trench will rupture, but when. Scientists use every tool at their disposal, satellites, seismographs, computer models, to try to predict the next event. But the Earth does not give up its secrets easily. The uncertainty is a source of anxiety but also of determination, as communities work to prepare for the worst. And when it does, the Philippines will face a test unlike any it has ever known. The resilience of its people, the strength of its institutions, and the wisdom of its leaders will all be put to the ultimate test. But even in the face of such danger, there is hope. By understanding the risks, preparing for the worst, and working together, the people of the Philippines can face the unseen danger beneath the waves and emerge stronger than ever before. In December 2024, the sleeping giant began to stir. The world was just beginning to wind down for the holidays, but beneath the surface of the Western Pacific, something ancient and powerful was awakening. The Manila Trench, a deep scar in the seafloor running parallel to the Philippine archipelago, had long been a source of fascination and fear for geologists. For decades it had lain mostly silent, its immense potential for destruction hidden beneath the waves. But now, subtle tremors and strange signals hinted that the tranquility was about to be shattered. A chilling new update from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, sent a wave of alarm through the scientific community and government agencies. The news broke quietly at first, a technical bulletin circulated among experts, but it quickly escalated into a national concern. Scientists and officials gathered in urgent meetings, their faces drawn and tense as they pored over the latest data. The sense of unease was palpable, spreading from the control rooms of PHIVOLCS to the highest levels of government. For years, experts had warned about the potential of the Manila Trench, but their warnings were often based on historical data and geological models. The last truly catastrophic event in the region was so far back in history that it had faded from living memory, becoming more legend than lesson. Researchers had pieced together the story from ancient records, sediment layers, and the silent testimony of the land itself. They knew the risk was real, but without recent precedent, it was easy for the public, and even some officials, to dismiss the threat as remote or hypothetical. This time, the evidence was new and immediate. The Earth itself was sending a clear signal that something was changing in the deep, a sign that the long period of quiet might be coming to an end. Seismographs, usually tracing gentle undulations, now recorded sharp, erratic spikes. Underwater sensors picked up low, ominous rumbles that echoed through the trench. It was as if the planet was issuing a warning, a message written in the language of shifting rock and grinding plates. This was not a theoretical risk anymore. It was an unfolding event. The data was undeniable and the implications were grave. Scientists who had spent their careers studying the trench now found themselves at the center of a rapidly developing crisis. Every new reading, every fresh tremor added urgency to their work. The sense of responsibility weighed heavily on their shoulders. They knew that millions of lives could depend on their ability to interpret the signs correctly. The alert was triggered by a series of unusual seismic events detected off the coast of Luzon. These were not the typical background tremors that the region experienced on a daily basis. Instead, they formed a distinct pattern, clusters of earthquakes, each one building on the last, as if the Earth was flexing and testing its own limits. The pattern was unmistakable to those who knew what to look for, and it set off alarms in monitoring stations across the country. Known as a seismic swarm, a flurry of small to moderate earthquakes began to rattle the seabed. These swarms are often precursors to larger events, a kind of geological prelude that signals mounting stress along a fault line. The ocean floor, usually a realm of slow, imperceptible movement, was now alive with energy. Each quake sent ripples through the water, disturbing marine life and hinting at the immense forces at play far below. While minor tremors are common in a seismically active country like the Philippines, this pattern was different. Most people in Manila and the surrounding provinces barely noticed the initial quakes. Perhaps a rattling window here, a swaying lamp there. Life went on as usual, with commuters crowding the streets and families gathering for the holidays. But beneath the surface, the situation was anything but normal. The frequency and intensity of the tremors were increasing and the locations were clustering ominously along the trench. The location, depth, and frequency of these quakes pointed directly to activity along the subduction zone of the Manila Trench. This is where the immense Philippine sea plate is forced beneath the Eurasian plate, a process that generates enormous pressure over centuries. The epicenters lined up like a trail of breadcrumbs, tracing the outline of the trench with uncanny precision. For geologists, it was a clear sign that the fault was becoming unstable. It was as if a lock was being tested, its tumblers clicking into place. The analogy was not lost on the scientists. Each small quake was like a key turning, testing the strength of the mechanism. Deep underground, the plates were grinding against each other, the friction building with every passing day. The question was not if the lock would give way, but when and how violently. Scientists at PHIVOLCS worked around the clock, analyzing the data and trying to understand what it meant for the country's immediate future. Their offices became a hive of activity, with teams rotating through shifts to ensure that someone was always watching the monitors. The pressure was immense. Every decision, every recommendation could have life or death consequences. They consulted with international experts, cross-checked their findings, and debated the best course of action as the situation evolved hour by hour. Their conclusion was stark and terrifying. The data pointed to a scenario that few had dared to imagine, but none could ignore. The risk was no longer abstract, it was immediate, and it was growing by the day. The scientists knew that they had to act quickly, but they also understood the weight of their words. A false alarm could cause panic and chaos, but a missed warning could be catastrophic. The seismic swarm suggested that a locked segment of the trench, a portion that has not moved for centuries and has therefore stored up the most energy, could be on the verge of rupturing. This locked segment was like a loaded spring, compressed by the relentless movement of the plates. Over time, the energy stored in this section had reached unimaginable levels, enough to unleash a disaster on a scale rarely seen in human history. The digital models showed stress lines glowing red, a visual representation of the danger lurking beneath the sea. Even more frightening was their assessment that this rupture could happen without any significant foreshock. In many earthquakes, a series of smaller quakes precedes the main event, providing a crucial window of warning. But in this case, the data suggested that the locked segment could snap suddenly, with little or no advance notice. The scientists debated the implications, their faces etched with concern as they realized the enormity of what they were facing. This means there would be no large preliminary earthquake to serve as a final warning. The usual systems designed to alert the public, sirens, text messages, emergency broadcasts, would have no time to activate. The first indication that something was wrong would be the ground itself, shaking with a violence that defied comprehension. For millions of people living along the coast, there would be no time to prepare, no chance to seek shelter. The main event, the big one, could strike suddenly and without any notice. In an instant, the world would change, buildings would sway, roads would crack, and the familiar landscape would become unrecognizable. The shockwaves would travel through the earth at incredible speed, toppling structures and sending debris flying. For those caught in the open, the experience would be terrifying and surreal, a nightmare come to life. The first sign of disaster would be the disaster itself, a colossal earthquake erupting from the seafloor with devastating force. The rupture would send a massive jolt through the ocean, displacing billions of tons of water in an instant. The surface of the sea would heave and churn, as if some monstrous force was rising from the depths. Ships at sea would be tossed like toys, and the shockwaves would be felt for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Based on their analysis, PHIVOLCS modeled a worst-case scenario, a magnitude 8.4 megathrust earthquake. This would be one of the most powerful quakes ever recorded in the region, rivaling the great disasters of history. The simulations showed entire cities shaking, bridges collapsing, and infrastructure crumbling under the relentless assault. The energy released would be equivalent to hundreds of atomic bombs, a force of nature beyond human control. The numbers they presented were staggering. The models predicted widespread destruction, with tens of thousands of buildings at risk of collapse. Critical infrastructure, hospitals, power plants, communication networks, would be severely affected. The human cost was almost unimaginable, with the potential for thousands of casualties and millions displaced. The scientists struggled to convey the scale of the threat, knowing that words alone could not capture the reality of what was coming. The ground shaking could last for up to 4 terrifying minutes, an eternity for anyone caught in its grip. In those moments, time would seem to stretch and warp, every second filled with fear and uncertainty. People would cling to each other, praying for the shaking to stop, for the world to return to normal. But the quake would be relentless, a reminder of the awesome power of the earth beneath our feet. Within 1 to 2 minutes of the earthquake, a massive tsunami would be generated. The sudden displacement of the seafloor would send a series of waves racing outward, gathering speed and strength as they approached the shore. The ocean would recede, exposing the seabed in a haunting prelude to the disaster. For those who recognized the signs, there would be only moments to act. This wall of water would then race towards the coastline at the speed of a jetliner, leaving almost no time for evacuation. The tsunami would be invisible at first, a silent threat moving beneath the surface. But as it neared the land, it would rise up, transforming into a towering wave that dwarfed everything in its path. People would have only minutes to flee, their lives hanging in the balance as the water closed in. Coastal communities would have mere minutes to escape before being inundated by waves that could reach heights of up to 15 meters, the equivalent of a 5-story building crashing down upon them. The force of the water would obliterate everything in its path. Homes, schools, businesses, entire neighborhoods swept away in an instant. Survivors would be left to pick through the wreckage, searching for loved ones and trying to make sense of the devastation. The warning from the depths was clear. The time to prepare was now, before the next great quake rewrote the history of the Philippines forever. The implications of this scenario are almost too grim to contemplate. Imagine for a moment the world as you know it. Your daily routines, the familiar cityscape, the comforting hum of life, shattered in an instant. The threat we face is not just a distant possibility, but a looming reality that could strike without warning, upending everything we take for granted. The sense of unease that lingers in the air is not unfounded, it is a reflection of the very real danger that lies beneath our feet and just off our shores. An earthquake of this magnitude would not just be a natural disaster, it would be a national crisis on an unprecedented scale. Emergency response teams would be stretched to their limits, and government officials would be forced to make impossible decisions in the face of chaos. The destruction would be so widespread that even the most well-prepared agencies would struggle to keep up. Hospitals would overflow, communication lines would be jammed, and the very fabric of society would be tested as never before. The intense and prolonged shaking would flatten cities, crumble infrastructure, and trigger widespread landslides. Roads would become impassable, bridges would collapse into rivers, and entire neighborhoods could be swallowed by the earth. The landscape itself would be transformed, with familiar landmarks reduced to rubble and dust. The aftermath would resemble a war zone, with survivors struggling to comprehend the scale of the devastation. Major urban centers along the western coast, such as San Fernando and La Union and the cities around Subic Bay, would bear the brunt of the initial impact. These vibrant communities, home to hundreds of thousands, would be among the first to feel the full force of the earthquake. The shaking would be so violent that even the most robust buildings could not withstand it. In a matter of seconds, the lives of countless families would be changed forever. Buildings, bridges, and power lines would collapse, paralyzing the region and cutting off communication and transportation. Emergency vehicles would be unable to reach those in need, and survivors would be forced to navigate a landscape of twisted metal and shattered concrete. The loss of power would plunge entire cities into darkness, compounding the sense of fear and uncertainty. In the chaos, families would be separated, and the search for loved ones would become a desperate race against time. The very foundations of modern life would be shaken to pieces in a matter of minutes. The systems we rely on, water, electricity, transportation, communication, would all be disrupted or destroyed. The sense of security that comes from living in a modern city would vanish, replaced by a primal struggle for survival. In those terrifying moments, the true fragility of our civilization would be laid bare. But the danger extends far beyond the coast. The seismic waves would travel deep inland, shaking towns and villages that may have never experienced such devastation before. Rural communities, often overlooked in disaster planning, would find themselves isolated and vulnerable. The damage would not be confined to a single region. It would ripple outward, affecting millions across the country. Metro Manila, the economic and political heart of the nation, is uniquely vulnerable. With its dense population, sprawling infrastructure, and critical government institutions, the capital is the nerve center of the Philippines. Any disruption here would have far-reaching consequences, not just for the city itself, but for the entire country. The stakes could not be higher. The city is built upon a soft, sedimentary basin, essentially a deep bowl of ancient river deposits. This geological feature, while invisible to the naked eye, has a profound impact on how the city responds to earthquakes. The ground beneath Manila is not solid rock, but a mixture of sand, silt, and clay. Materials that amplify seismic energy and increase the risk of liquefaction, where the earth itself can behave like a liquid during intense shaking. This soft ground acts like gelatin, amplifying seismic waves and making the shaking feel much stronger than it would on solid bedrock. Buildings that might have survived on firmer ground could be toppled here, and the risk of catastrophic collapse is magnified. The difference between life and death could come down to the type of soil beneath your feet, a sobering reminder of the hidden dangers that lie beneath our cities. Even though it is dozens of kilometers inland, the capital could experience catastrophic damage. The skyline, so often a symbol of progress and prosperity, could be transformed into a silhouette of broken towers and rising smoke. The psychological impact of such destruction would be immense, leaving a scar on the national consciousness that could last for generations. Countless older buildings and informal settlements, which often do not comply with modern building codes, would be at extreme risk of collapse, trapping thousands of people under rubble. These densely packed neighborhoods, home to some of the most vulnerable citizens, would become epicenters of tragedy. Rescue efforts would be hampered by narrow streets and unstable debris, making it nearly impossible to reach those in need quickly. This is a threat that has been growing in silence for generations. The calm surface of the sea belies the immense forces at work beneath. For centuries, communities have thrived along these coasts, unaware of the ticking time bomb that lies just offshore. The Manila Trench, a geological feature formed over millions of years, has quietly accumulated stress, waiting for the moment when it will be released in a burst of unimaginable energy. While other fault lines, like the West Valley Fault that runs through Metro Manila, have received significant attention, the Manila Trench has remained a more distant, less understood danger in the public consciousness. Scientists have long warned of its potential, but public awareness has lagged behind. The focus on more visible threats has left a critical gap in our preparedness, one that could have devastating consequences if left unaddressed. This lack of awareness is a critical weakness. When people do not understand the risks they face, they are less likely to take the necessary steps to protect themselves and their families. Disaster preparedness is not just about having emergency supplies. It is about cultivating a mindset of vigilance and readiness. Without this, even the best-laid plans can fall apart in the face of a true catastrophe. Preparedness drills and public information campaigns have not focused on the specific, dual threat of a massive offshore earthquake, followed by an almost instantaneous tsunami. While some communities practice earthquake drills, few are prepared for the rapid sequence of events that could unfold. The ground shaking violently, followed by a sudden withdrawal of the sea, and then the arrival of a towering wall of water. The window for action would be measured in minutes, not hours. Many coastal residents may not even know the natural warning signs. A powerful earthquake, a sudden receding of the ocean, or a strange roaring sound coming from the sea. These are nature's alarms, signaling that a tsunami may be imminent. In the absence of widespread education and awareness, precious seconds could be lost as people hesitate, unsure of what to do. The difference between survival and tragedy could hinge on recognizing these signs and acting without delay. The December 2024 warning from PHIVOLCS serves as a final urgent wake-up call. Scientists have sounded the alarm, urging the public and government alike to take the threat seriously. This is not a drill, nor is it a distant possibility. The evidence is clear, and the time to act is now. The question is not if, but when the next great earthquake will strike. Across the country, experts are working tirelessly to monitor seismic activity and update emergency plans. But their efforts can only go so far without the support and participation of the public. Community leaders are stepping up, organizing evacuation routes and disaster response teams, but they need every citizen to be informed and ready to act. The responsibility for survival is shared by all. The Earth has given us a preview of what is possible, a glimpse into the immense power contained within the trench. Recent tremors and seismic activity are not just random events, they are warnings. Reminders that the forces shaping our world are still very much alive. The Manila Trench is not a relic of the past, but a living, dynamic system capable of unleashing destruction on a scale few can imagine. Complacency is no longer an option. Every moment spent doubting or delaying increases the risk to ourselves and our loved ones. The clock is ticking and the window for preparation is closing fast. We must move beyond denial and take concrete steps to safeguard our communities. The time for action is now, before it is too late. The clock is ticking, and every moment of inaction increases the potential cost in human lives. Emergency workers are preparing, families are waiting, and the entire nation is holding its breath. The choices we make today will determine the outcome of tomorrow's disaster. Will we be ready, or will we be caught off guard? The silent threat beneath the sea is silent no more. The signs are all around us, if only we choose to see them. The ocean, so often a source of life and livelihood, now conceals a danger that could change the course of history. We must respect the power of nature and prepare for its inevitable return. It is a clear and present danger that demands an immediate and comprehensive response from the government, from communities, and from every single citizen. Disaster preparedness is not just the responsibility of officials or experts, it is a collective effort that requires the participation of all. By working together, we can build resilience and save lives. The survival of millions may depend on what we do next. Our actions today will shape the future for generations to come. The clock is ticking, and the time to act is now.